The first victim is a fish, part 3. Subject 20, infantilized by baby boomers. This is a socio-cultural critique positing that the generational cohort known as the baby boomers, through specific cultural, economic, and political practices, has fostered a state of prolonged adolescence and dependency in subsequent generations. The argument proceeds on several fronts. Economic, through policies that inflated asset prices, particularly housing, and accumulated national debt. Boomers are accused of pulling the ladder up behind them, making financial independence a key marker of adulthood, increasingly difficult for their children and grandchildren. This creates a state of economic infantilization, where adult offspring may remain financially reliant on their parents for far longer. Cultural. The boomer generation's enduring cultural dominance, clinging to positions of power in media, politics, and corporations well into their senior years, is seen as preventing generations X, Y, and Z from achieving cultural authority and defining their own era. They are treated as perpetual heirs, never allowed to fully inherit. Rhetorical. There is a perceived tendency to dismiss the legitimate concerns of younger generations about climate change, student debt, precarious work as the naive whining of snowflakes who lack resilience. This dismissal is a form of rhetorical infantilization, refusing to engage with their concerns as those of fully formed, rational adults. The result is a generation or generations that is chronologically adult, but is systemically and psychologically treated as, and sometimes forced to behave as, children. They are spoken down to, economically handicapped, and are culturally sidelined, leading to a widespread feeling of frustration, impotence, and a delayed or even denied assumption of full adult responsibility and power. Subject number 21, on trial. This is a state of being, real or perceived, where an individual's actions, character, or very identity are subjected to intense, formalized scrutiny and judgment. While literal in a courtroom, the metaphorical state of being on trial is a common and potent psychological experience. One can be on trial in the court of public opinion, where social media serves as both prosecutor and jury. One can be on trial in their own family, their life choices constantly measured against parental expectations. One can be on trial in a relationship where every mistake is entered into evidence against one's fitness as a partner. The experience is characterized by hypervigilance and performance anxiety. The individual feels they must constantly defend, explain, and justify themselves. Spontaneity becomes impossible as every word and deed is filtered through the lens of how it will be received by the perceived tribunal. The normal, messy process of living is replaced by a careful, self-conscious presentation of a case. The feeling of being on trial often stems from a deep-seated sense of shame or inadequacy projected onto an external audience. Whether the judgment is real or imagined, the psychological effects are similar: a constant draining pressure, a defensive posture, and the erosion of the simple, unself-conscious joy of existence. To be found not guilty in such a trial rarely feels like an acquittal. It feels like a temporary stay of execution until the next proceeding begins. Subject 22. Lie adroit. This is the high art of deception. To lie adroitly is not merely to state a falsehood, it is to weave a tapestry of verisimilitude so convincing that it becomes, for all practical purposes, a functional truth. It is a performance that encompasses words, demeanor, timing, and an intimate understanding of the target's expectations and desires. The adroit liar understands that the most effective lies are built around a kernel of truth or are constructed to confirm what the listener already wants to believe. They do not over-elaborate, understanding that excessive detail is the hallmark of fabrication. They master the non-verbal cues of honesty, a steady gaze, a relaxed posture, a tone of voice that conveys slight offense at being doubted. Their preparation is meticulous. They anticipate follow-up questions and have pre-constructed plausible answers. They may even plant supporting evidence, a casual remark to a third party, a strategically placed object to buttress their narrative. The adroit liar is a psychologist, a playwright, and an actor, all rolled into one. The goal of an adroit lie is not just to deceive, but to leave the target with no lingering sense of having been deceived. The false reality is presented so seamlessly that it is integrated into the target's worldview without a ripple. The greatest triumph of an adroit lie is that it is never discovered. It simply becomes part of the accepted history, its fictional nature lost to time. Subject 23. Admonition took effect. This phrase describes the successful integration of a warning or criticism into an individual's psyche, resulting in a tangible and lasting change in behavior or perspective. It is the process by which an external correction becomes an internal governor. For an admonition to take effect, several conditions must be met. First, the source of the admonition must be respected or feared by the recipient. A warning from a revered mentor carries more weight than the same warning from a despised rival. Second, the admonition must be perceived as just and accurate, at least on some level, by the recipient's own conscience. It must resonate with their own private doubts or insecurities. The effect is not always immediate or dramatic. It often begins as a quiet humiliation or a prick to the ego. This is followed by a period of private rumination where the individual replays the admonition and their own transgression, testing the validity of the criticism. If it takes hold, a shift occurs. The individual internalizes the warning and it becomes a new checkpoint in their decision making process. The change is evidenced in future actions. The once arrogant student, admonished for their sloppy work, becomes painstakingly precise. The executive, who is criticized for his dismissive tone in meetings, now makes a conscious effort to listen. The admonition has been successfully grafted onto their operating system, modifying their code of conduct from within. It is a rare and beautiful moment of successful moral and behavioral education. Subject 24. Reason is the first victim of strong emotion. This principle states that the cognitive faculty of reason, the capacity for logic, analysis, and dispassionate judgment, is immediately and decisively compromised by the onslaught of a powerful emotion, such as rage, terror, consuming desire, or overwhelming grief. Before anything else is lost, the ability to think clearly is sacrificed. When a strong emotion floods the system, it is not that reason is politely asked to step aside, it is physically and chemically supplanted. The amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex. The body is preparing for a primal response. Fight, flight, freeze, fornicate, not for a nuanced debate. Blood flow and neurochemical resources are diverted away from the centers of higher thought and toward the limbs and senses. In this state, the individual does not merely choose to ignore reason, they are incapable of accessing it in its full capacity. Their perception narrows to the source of the emotion. Their memory becomes selective, retrieving only data that justifies the current feeling. Their ability to foresee consequences is severely diminished. A person in a rage cannot be reasoned with because the very apparatus required for reasoning is offline. This is why critical decisions should never be made in the white-hot grip of strong emotion. The first victim must be given time to recover. The storm of feeling must pass before the rational mind can once again survey the damage, assess the situation, and plot a sensible course forward. To understand this principle is to understand a fundamental vulnerability of the human condition and to learn the critical importance of emotional self-regulation.